Welcome to the lecture series of AWS Cloud Architect. In previous video, we have seen how to create VPC and how to assign an internet gateway to that VPC. So this is the scenario what we have seen in the previous session. That is, we have created one VPC with the name Infosys, and in that we have created 3 subnets. In each subnet, we have pasted one EC2 instance named as Web Services, Web Server, Application Server, DB Server. And also we have tried to establish a communication between them. That is, we have verified whether these servers are able to communicate each other or not with their public IP address. Now here, point to be remembered is, when a system is in internet, it will have public IP address. Using public IP address through internet, it can be connected. But as we have created a special private network, we have to check whether they can communicate with the private IP address or not. Okay, that is what we will see now. In previous video, we have seen using the public IP address, we have checked whether they are able to communicate or not. Now let's check how whether those Amazon virtual servers are able to communicate or not within a private network using the private IP address. Let's see. We know that we have created these 3 different instances and we have placed it in a different locations. Let's see this web server we have placed in this US East 1A zone in the region northwest. Next, this application server we have placed it in a availability zone 1B in the same North Virginia region. This DB server we have placed it in a 1C zone in the same region. If you see, we have communicated or we have connected these instances using this public IP because they are in a internet. Okay, but there is a problem with this public IP. If public IP is there, everybody can access it. So in real time, what will happen is only the unimportant files will be placed in a server and a public IP will be given. Of course, each and every server will have a public IP, but while accessing those servers, we have to redirect through a routing table. We have to define a rules in a routing table so that an unauthorized user cannot access directly to that server. Okay, that we will discuss in the coming videos, how to protect an unauthorized user, okay, to access these servers. If you see this, each and every server is having a public IP. This is a public IP and it is its private IP. Similarly, this web server private IP is this one. This application server private IP is this one. If you see this private IP address, if you see, while we create the subnets, we have given a range that's 10.1.2.0 for the subnet application server. And for this web server subnet, we have given 10.1.1.1 something like that. That's why the IP address of these instances are starting from this 10.1. This is starting from this 10.1.2 and this is starting from this 10.1.3. Okay. Now, in the previous session, we have tried to check whether they are communicating or not with this public IP. As they are in a internet publicly available, so definitely they are going to communicate with each other. But we have to access it from this private IP address. If you see this diagram, this is the private zone for this web server, application server, and DB server. Using the private IP address, we have to establish the communication. Let's see. First, we'll log into this web server using its public IP. What is web server public IP? This is the public IP of web server. Okay. In one machine, we have to communicate. We have to log in with its public IP only, because we will log in through the internet. So we require this public IP. Let's log into this web server. Okay. So from my local machine, I'm connecting to this virtual server, which is placed at Amazon US East 1A, and now we have connected. If you see here, private IP of that web server instance has come here, 10.1.1.210. Okay. Now let's connect this DB server using its private IP. What is the private IP of this DB server? 10.1.3.16. Okay. Now we have to ping this. Yeah. Now we are getting the response. Okay. See, from the 10.1.1.2102 to 10.1.3.16. So this web server and DB server are communicating each other. This web server and DB server are communicating each other. Why? Because these are in a same private zone. So that's why communication is established. So now what we have to do is, we have to create this TCS VPC. In this VPC, we will place one web application server, one web server in one subnet, one application in another subnet. Next, we will try to access, we will log in into this web server, and we will try to access another private zone instance. Let's see. Okay, I will stop this pinging here. In a similar fashion, you can check this app server also. App server IP is this one. Okay, I'll ping it. Okay, so it is communicating. Means web server is communicating with application server as well as the DB server. Okay, similarly, you can cross check from the application server to web server and DB server. Okay, that will work, no issues, because all are in a same private zone, and all three servers are in the same virtual private cloud. So there will be no issues in a communicate. What we'll do is, we'll create another VPC with the TCS, and we will check whether these two servers, which are in a two different subnets, can communicate or not. Let's check. So what to do? Go to this service, go to the VPC. Next, go to your VPCs. Can you remember, once you complete your practice, remember all these VPCs, otherwise bill will be get generated. I will create one VPC now. I'll give its name as TCS VPC, and I'll give IP address something like 10.0, otherwise 10.1. Let me take 2.0.0. Okay, create it. You should be very careful while assigning the IP address, because all the IP address should be in the same range. Okay, now this is available. Now let us create subnets in this TCS VPC. These three subnets are there in the Infosys VPC. Create new one. I will give it as TCS web subnet, and when you place your mouse here, TCS VPC is there. I will create it in a 1A zone. So to give the IP address 10.2. Let me take 1.124. It should start from this 10.2 only. Create. Okay. You can enter. Maybe what can I be? 0. Okay. Okay. Now TCS web subnet is created. Let me create one more subnet. I will give it as TCS. What is that? Application subnet. In which VPC? In TCS VPC. Availability, I will place it in this 1B. Value IP address has 10.2.2.0/24. Create. That is also created. Okay. So now this subnet is created so far. Now we have to create this internet gateway also. Go to internet gateway. Create internet gateway. I will give it as TCS internet gateway. Create new. Okay, we have to attach a VPC to that gateway. Which VPC? TCS VPC. Because already for Infosys VPC it is already attached. Attach it. Okay, fine. After that we have to create the root table. The root table we have to add here. When VPC is created, already a root table also by default it will be get created. Okay, but name is not there. We give the name here. TCS root table. Okay, here we have to add the subnets to this TCS. For this, go to subnet association. So as there are two subnets are there, remaining are already attached to other VPCs. So I'm attaching this. Save. Okay, now we have to edit this roots because we should allow it from the other network also. So otherwise by default within a local, so any packet is coming from the series 10.2, they will be transferred to that particular instance which is located in that subnet. I will edit this route. Okay, add the route as we should access it from outside the network also. That is from the internet or from any other network also. It should be written like this. Internet gateway. Which one? This one. Okay. Now root also created. Now let us place a virtual machine in this subnet. So where to do? And we have to create rules also that at the time of creation of instances also we can do, or from here also we can do. Okay, I will go to the services now. Go to the EC2. Go to this running instances. Click on launch instance. I'll select this Amazon Linux image. I'll select this pre-tier T2 micro. Okay, now here it is important. So one more thing I forgot. When a subnet is created, if you want to have a dynamic IP or default IP, what you can do is you can go to this VPC. You have to auto enable that IP address where you can see, go to this subnet. For this TCS subset, what you do, right click on it, edit, modify auto assign IP settings is there. You enable it. Okay, for another TCS. Okay, I click modify auto IP. Of course, without this also we can, no problem. I'll go to services, EC2. So if you don't enable that IP address, we will not get the public IP. So while creating instance also, we can have the public IP. That also I will show now. Launch instance. Select this. I'll go with this default one. See here in which network that you want to have. I want to have it in a TCS VPC. In TCS, two subnets are there. In which subnet? Subnet which is there in this 1 year zone. See here. So if you don't enable, if you don't modify the auto assign public IP in the subnet, you won't get this drop down. You won't get this option. You will get only enable and disable. Now I will use this subnet settings. Okay. Next, add storage. I'll go with this default storage. I'll add one tag here. I will assign name as TCS web server. Configure the security group. Okay. Already I have an existing group here that I will use. Okay, it is not there. So I will create a new security group for this. I will create it TCS security group. I will add this ISS SSH as well as the ICMP also. ICMP, where is ICMP? Here ICMP is there. Make it anywhere. Make it anywhere. Review and launch. Okay, launch it. Add the private key pair. Launch. It is launching now. Instance is created. TCS web server. I will create one more. So what happened now? This is created. This complete portion. This I will extend it to this up to this. Go here. Select. Select TCS. And I will place this in a 1B location. Again enable it. Auto assign IP. Add tag. Next I will name it as TCS. Let it be application server. Okay. So one existed group already we have created, that is TCS SG. Next, launch it. Select the private key pair. Launch instance. View instance. Okay, now it is created. See here, now web server is there. In which zone? 1 year zone. Application server is there in 1B zone. Okay. Now you can see IP address, private IP address is 10.2.1.22. It is having this public IP address. Okay. So one thing we forgot here, see it is public DNS is now not there, but you can see here the public for this Infosys we are having this public DNS. Why? Because in while creating the VPC we forgot to enable the public DNS. Okay, let me show you that. Go to VPC. Go to your VPC. Next, In this TCS VPC, right click on it, edit DNS host name. This has to be enabled so that you will get that complete DNS host name. Go to EC2, running instance. Okay, now we should get that complete DNS name for TCS web server. Yeah, now it is there. Now what we will do, so what we did, this is also created, this subnet as well as this virtual machine, this subnet as well as this virtual machine. Okay, I am not creating this, the concept is same. Okay, now what I will do, I will log in to this virtual machine and I will try to access this virtual machine which is not in this zone. Okay, or else this virtual machine I will try to access, let's say, but there should be a communication between TCS web server and TCS application server. Let's check what is the IP address of TCS web server. Public IP. Using public IP, we will log in. Let me clear it. Okay, this is the public IP. Yeah, now you have connected. You can see here 10.2.1.122. 10.2.1.122. Okay, let's connect to the TCS application server. How? Here, this is TCS application server. Its IP address is this one. Okay, check this. Communicating or not? Yes, absolutely communicating. Okay, it means these two are communicating each other. Now, when I try to access this web server from the TCS, it should not. Let's check. What is the IP address of Infosys web server? 10.1.1. Copied it. Okay. Let's check. See, we should not get the reply. It is not communicating. So, why it is so? This machine is in one private zone. This is in another private zone. So, when you are trying to access, you cannot. Okay. But if you use the public IP of this, it will be get accessed. Okay. So, in real time, what will be happen is, so whatever the sensitive data is there, okay, directly we should not get the access to that server. Now using public IP, you can access any machine from anywhere as they are connected to the internet. So for example, database access generally will not be given to the public. So if you want to access this database, what is expected is first you have to log into this private zone. From this private zone, you have to access this. Okay. As it is having a public IP, everybody can access. Still, we should not allow the users to access this database through the public IP address. So what is required is we have to log in into this, means directly from the internet gateway you cannot access it. From the internet gateway, what to do? You have to enter into this area. From this area, you should have some filter. Through that filter, if the user is valid user, then only you have to divert that traffic to that database server. Okay, you means you have to change that network direction. So how you can do that? There is a concept called NATing, N-A-T. In that we will discuss all those things. That is in the next video we will discuss that how we can protect the sensitive data when public IP is there, that is machines. That we will discuss in the next chapter. So what we did now, we have created these two subnets. In these two subnets, we have placed the virtual machines like web server and application server, and we have tried to establish the communication between these two virtual machines, that is within TCS. They are communicating, and we have tested to access this Infosys web server from the TCS, that is not getting connected. So our aim is success now. Now next, we will log in into this Infosys. Then let's check whether from the Infosys are you able to connect to this TCS servers or not. Okay, let's check that. Let's log into this TCS DB Infosys DB server from its public IP. Okay, what is that IP? Already we have noticed. This is the public IP of Infosys DB server. This one, DB servers. So for the first time, it will be added. That key will be added to your machine. So now we are in this DB server. I would like to access this TCS web server from this Infosys. What is the private IP? Is okay. It is not getting the reply. Okay. So within the private zone you can access, but outside the private zone you cannot access any machine with the private address. Okay. This is what about the VPC and subnet. In next session or next video, we will see how to protect the data when public IP is assigned to the all the servers, how we can redirect the network traffic. That we will see in the next session. I hope you enjoyed the session, and after completion of this, you have to remove all your instances, because this VPC concept is not a free. Charges are applicable for this. Thank you.